Mwenyeheri TV. Habari, kazi na sala.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Minister Joseph Balozi from Egypt, and I'm here to propose the topic that Europeans underdeveloped Africans in some views. We have all studied about the Eurocentric and Afrocentric views, right? According to the Eurocentric views, they say that Africa was a dark place, a dark continent, according to European philosophies. But when it came to the Afrocentric views, it claims that Africa was quite developed before the coming of Europeans. This means that we had clothing industries and we had all types of industries, and in some point we exceeded the Europeans. But the problem started when we and Europeans interacted. And here are my few points to support this. First, Europeans led to the exploitation of African natural resources. As you all know, Africa is a blessed continent. We have everything. We have gold, silver, animal skin, we have gum, and all those are quite important raw materials in our places. But the Europeans came here not for the aim of advancing us and teaching us on ways to create goods and stuff like that, but instead they made Africa the farm. Like, they took what they want, then they bring the products which they produce from what we gave them. So this was exploitation, and in return we only got mirrors, we got guns, which possibly did not help us at all. But if we had used those gold, silver, copper, we would have developed ourselves.
I do not say no to that, but they exploited our natural resources so that they can develop their own. If it was true that Africa wanted to develop, they should have tried to find ways of their own. We used to do barter trade, but we were only gaining things that were beneficial to us, not thinking about the production, not thinking about the future and all the inheritance that our great or grandchildren would be having. My second point is in the improvement of transport means and currency systems. As we can see today, if you take a wide range from the year 1990 to the year 2024, you can see we started using tarmac roads that were just made out of sand. Now we go to gravel roads. Now they're complete new systems. People are going on subways. People are going on railways. We went from a great range. If you look, one of the countries that are amazingly developed is one of my neighboring countries, and it's a little bit far from where I am, South Africa. It is completely developed because of the Europeans. And I should also thank the Europeans again because of the improvement of leadership systems. In my country, Ivory Coast, with the help of the first president of our country, Felix Houphouët-Boigny, who worked with the people from French, they worked together and were able to introduce liberal democracy in our country. Now, the Europeans, as you can see until now, have helped us a lot. If we go back to currency systems, we went from using cowrie shells in the trans-Saharan trade. Now, we are using coins, we are using notes. We are now even using digital money, cryptocurrencies. These are the type of currencies where you don't need to touch. Everything is in your phone. It is in the digital world. And they own even more value than the ones that we have in our pockets. People could be having 500 or 1,000, but cryptocurrencies have more value. The reason why Africans have the freedom to use these currencies is because of the Europeans. We should not forget, Africa says that Europe underdeveloped us. Well, let me tell you that there are internal hindrances of how. The first one is political instability. I think all of you are aware of Muammar Gaddafi. He's one of the greatest and well-known dictators who once lived.
I would like to welcome Minister Boniface Jacob all the way from Ghana. Can you clap for him?
My first point is that the Europeans have undermined the rights of Africans by making Africans their market. As all we know that a market is a place where we can sell and buy our goods and services. So if a country or a place is being made a market, it will use its currencies and its wealth in order to acquire the commodities or the goods which are being sold by the other countries or other firms. So as African was made a market by the Europeans brought up their goods in Africa and they sell them in exchange with precious raw materials such as gold, animal skins, ivory. Through those precious goods, they benefited a lot the Europeans. If the Europeans were good people, they would give us a technology on how we could process minerals, those ivories, and we would use them for our benefit. But as they are bad people, they wanted to benefit themselves. They take up the minerals, those animal skins, ivory, and go and produce the goods in their own countries. And then in turn, they brought the finished goods in Africa to sell them in exchange again with the raw material. So the cycle of exploitation of African resources, it was championed by the Europeans.
Minister Dorcas, all the way from Rwanda, seem to have something to say about it. Minister Dorcas, you're welcome. Thank you once again, Chairperson, for this outrageous, courageous, and fantastic honor. Minister, first of all, thank you for the compliment. You look as quite handsome also. Thank you, Minister Joseph Balozi from Egypt. But I'd like to say something about your view. You say that the games that they are inventing, they're not advantageous to us, but they're making us lazy. Okay. When you read different articles, when you are a good reader, because I read a lot of articles, there's the first African doctor who was called Ben Carson, if you've ever heard of him. Ben Carson, he lacked a good systematic knowledge. You see? He was failing in class, failing everything, but he wanted to become a doctor. He had a dream to become a doctor, one way or another. But judging or basing on his story, when he was at home doing nothing, his brother went to school, the young brother went to school, they performed very fantastically. But while he was at home, his mother downloaded a game, a doctor game. We all know those games, right? Yes. And as the mother was giving the game, Ben Carson noticed something. He said that through the game, I can be able to learn something. He wanted to become a surgical doctor. But instead, after playing the game, it motivated him more to reach his goals. After that, his mother, his own mother from Africa told him, you have to go in the United States. You have to do more clarification of what you want to become. He went in America, in Mississippi at the first, a state in America called Mississippi. He went there, but things didn't go quite well. He went in California. He went there again, things didn't go as he was wanting to go, but he went in Los Angeles. After he went in Los Angeles, as he was working, we all know that it is true sometimes Africans are discriminated, but a white man called John, he's called John Cribert Wilk, yes, John Cribert Wilk, appreciated the work of Ben Carson, and he asked him, how did you learn while you were failing in class? He said, my mother offered me a game. My mother did what? Offered me a game. Through that game, it motivated me to come and learn more. Okay, another thing is that, yes, it makes lazy, but remember, there's a game called Skywheel. The game Skywheel was invented by just little children, 15, 16 years old. We know that game, right? And that game is invented by children from Game Shakers, right? Okay. The games that they are making, when we are stressed, we play them. You can't tell me you haven't eaten, or maybe you haven't been paid from your job, you are fired, and you just sit and say, I'll try again. You're still fired. Sometimes they make things to refresh your mind. After that, you switch off your phone and you rethink on what to do. Another thing is that it is true that Egyptians are the best. They made good pyramids. That is true. I have to accept it, what we're saying, the minister was saying. But he only saw on his country. What about other countries? What did they do? We have my country, for instance, Rwanda. Our lovely president, Paul Kagame. That man is really intelligent. He said about things about scholarship, that when they're taken in the Europe countries, they do not come back and demand for citizenship in Europe. That is incorrect and incorrect. Paul Kagame studied in Belgium because the Belgium colonized Rwandese people. He studied in Belgium. After his studies, he was told that he could continue even more working for the Europeans. But he had a country where he came from. That is Rwanda. He wanted to fight for the Rwandan people that were suffering between tribalism in them. So we see that the act of someone denying his citizenship is not by a person telling him to deny to be a Tanzanian, a Congolese, or a Rwanda. No, that comes from a person. We all go, Minister Balozi, you are educated, you can't tell me the education until you become a minister is from your country. There are a lot of ministers still going to European nations to learn even more on how to develop their countries. And that's why Paul Kagame went to Belgium to study. As you see, when you come in Rwanda, I invite you in Rwanda. That country is really fantastic, a smart country, a very beautiful country. So we see that it's the inner thing of a person to go back to my country, make development or not. Or it's not by a person telling you not to go back to your country. So let's all understand that Europeans do not underdevelop us. Instead, we underdeveloped ourselves because of our dark minds. We have to accept that fact. We have to accept that we are black-minded. And nothing is called like brainwash to someone. No, we are black-minded by ourselves. So I hope all of you will come on my side and accept that Europeans developed us. They did not underdevelop us. Thank you.
I'm standing before you as the history instructor, and just a few to make a comment. And before I commence, can we please join our hands for the presenters, because they participated fully. Can we clap for them, please? Clap. Yeah, I'm really interested, and I was it's like I'm invited to join, but because of the time, allow me to say a few words, mainly on the hard talk before us. The topic is Europe and underdeveloped Africa. Here the question is, how Europe underdeveloped Africa? The Eurocentric school of thought, and we have the Afrocentric school of thought. Those who opposed the motion were Eurocentric historians, or these were the ministers from European continent, or from the Western world, or from the North world, trying to defend themselves that Africa is underdeveloped because of its own problems, including the civil wars, including the question of low level of science and technology, because they decided to be the way they are right today. Now, if you try to go back to history, you find we have the reason why Africa is underdeveloped. We have the historical point of view. One is the question of colonialism. Some of the presenters here spoke much of how colonialism, the question of slave trade and the like, lead to underdevelopment of Africa. But we have the internal factors which are less concerned with the Europeans. Now the internal factors, also the opposers spoke of the internal factors, including the question of civil wars or political instabilities, the question of corruption, the question of natural disasters or natural hazards. All this has led to the question of underdevelopment. So this talk is a very controversial talk, because you can't say straight that Africa is underdeveloped because of the Europeans. No. Now, can you question yourself after independence? what happened after independence. For example, right from 1961 up to today, as we speak, we are still speaking this language, English language. Can't we just switch ourselves to our language? We are still employing the Europeans. We are still employing the Europeans' way of life. Can't we live basing on our own decision? Now we are free, but can we make our own decision? The policies that we are making, who is forcing us to do all these policies? The Europeans are not forcing us, but because of our decision, we have decided to side with them. So it is we Africans who have decided to choose this way. That is after independence. Now talk of Tanzania today. What are we lacking, for example? We have everything that's not found elsewhere in the world. For example, you talk of Tanzanite found in Tanzania, but the Europeans, the people of South Africa, the Chinese and the like, brag of the resources which are found only in Tanzania. Why? Because Tanzania has not decided to invest in this, have not decided to invest in technology. So if you invest in technology, you take people, you take the engineers or people to go and study in Russia and come back to invest in Tanzania. But we have the question of what we call brain drain. Those who are learned are taken by the white people. And Africans like to live in Europe. Why? It's because of their ignorance. Today, I'm bragging myself teaching at Mwenyeheri, teaching you people, or sharing with you the knowledge that I attained at school. But some of the Africans like to go to America and brag and feel so comfortable when they teach in America or when they stay in America. Why? It's because they think being there, it's like they're in heaven. So it's Africans themselves who are kicking, willing themselves going to Europe, but not the Europeans forcing them to go there. We have conditionalized, we have sensitized ourselves in that way. So be careful when you come to the point of making a comment that Africa is underdeveloped because of what? Europe. We have internal factors for underdevelopment, we have the external factors for underdevelopment, and we have the oncoming factors for underdevelopment. Is it clear? So all two groups, the proposers and opposers, saw good points on the question of underdevelopment. So let me make the last talk that as we get out of this place or this podium, please get informed that it's we people of today who have the duty or the task of trying as much as we can to move in a very positive way to relieve ourselves from the plight that we are going through, which has been caused by the African leaders themselves.
This is Mbogi TV. Habari, kazi na sala.